Welcome back to the Depth Dive. Today, we are heading to a place that, well, many of you might think you know. At least you've seen the postcards.
Right.
We are talking about Taipei's Zhongzheng district. You know the image. The massive blue and white memorial hall, those perfectly manicured gardens, the soldiers standing guard like statues.
It looks so serene.
It does. It looks like the absolute definition of stability.
It's the face Taiwan presents to the world, in many ways. It's the administrative brain of the island, the presidential offices there, the museums, all the grand monuments. It just projects order.
Exactly. But if you look a little closer, and that is exactly what we are doing today, you start to realize this district isn't just a collection of government buildings and tourist spots. It's almost like a crime scene.
Or maybe a battlefield is a better metaphor.
A battlefield of public memory, yeah, and political identity.
A battlefield of memory is a great way to put it. The research we're looking at today describes the Zhongzheng district as a high-density historical scene. And that's a crucial concept to start with.
High density. What does that mean exactly?
It means when you walk these wide boulevards, you aren't just walking on asphalt. You are walking over layers of history.
Yeah.
You've got the Qing Dynasty city walls, then the Japanese colonial grid, then the post-war authoritarian crackdown, and finally, the messiness of modern democracy, all right there.
And that is our mission for this deep dive. We are going to excavate 5 specific stories, we're calling them narrative axes, that are hidden right there in the landscape. We want to take you from the macro level, the giant monuments, down to the micro level of a quiet little alleyway.
We're going to cover a square that changed the definition of protest, a street that kept intellectualism alive, a hospital that lost its best minds, a monopoly bureau that sparked a revolution, and finally, a set of dormitories that teach us how to heal.
And for every single one of these stories, we have a hidden gem for you. These are specific places you can visit, not just to take a selfie, but to actually feel the weight of the history we're talking about.
Ready to jump in?
Let's do it. Story number 1, the silent revolution at Freedom Square.
This is probably the most recognizable spot in the entire district. The Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall and that massive square in front of it.
He's huge.
It is. And to understand this space, you have to understand the original intent. The architecture is grand. It's symmetrical.
It makes you feel small, intentionally so.
That was the point. It was designed to project the sacred and inviolable authority of the state and, well, of the strongman, Chiang Kai-shek. It was a material projection of political order.
It's all symbolism, isn't it?
Completely. The roof is an octagon for the 8 moral virtues. The stairs have 89 steps for his age at death. It was like the last huge material projection of that old political order before things really started to change.
But things did change, and this is where we get into this idea of the silent revolution.
Right.
Usually when a dictatorship falls, the statues come down immediately. We saw it in Iraq, we saw it in the Soviet Union, but Taiwan's transition to democracy was different. It was without mass bloodshed. It was gradual, a negotiated opening.
And because it was a silent revolution, a lot of the old symbols just remained. The buildings didn't get torn down. So you ended up with this really strange contradiction. You have a building designed for authoritarian worship sitting right in the middle of a modern democracy.
It's a bit of an awkward roommate situation with history, but the people didn't just let it sit there, did they?
No, they didn't. And this is what's so fascinating. The square became the venue for what you could call a democratic occupation.
Ah.
Precisely because the building was so authoritarian and so big, it became the perfect backdrop for protest. It paradoxically amplified the rebellious volume of the people.
We're talking about things like the Wild Lily student movement in 1990, right? Where thousands of students gathered to demand the dissolution of the National Assembly.
And then later, the Wild Strawberry movement, the marriage equality rallies, support for Hong Kong. It just goes on.
Oh, so the space shifted.
It shifted from commemorating an individual to witnessing the collective. The people physically took over the space and changed its meaning. They turned a site of, emperor worship into a site of citizen witness.
So here is your hidden gem for this site. When you go to the CKS Memorial Hall, don't just walk up the stairs, look at the giant bronze statue, and then leave.
Please don't.
You need to go downstairs to the base of the monument, visit the cultural gallery exhibitions.
Yes, these are organized by the management office itself. They've completely pivoted. They now curate exhibitions focused on truth, human rights, and the history of how this very space was transformed. It's part of a social repair project, but from the inside out.
So instead of just looking at the statue, you're looking at the history of how people fought for the right to even stand in that square. It turns a monument to a dictator into a living classroom for democracy.
It's a profound shift. You're standing on ground that was paved for authority but has been worn down by the feet of protesters.
Okay, let's leave the Grand Square and head, maybe 10 minutes away to something much grittier.
Yeah.
Story number 2. Blood and Tears on Guling Street.
This is a completely different atmosphere. If the square is about the state with a capital S, Guling Street is about the survival of the individual mind.
This street is famous for secondhand bookstores, but we aren't talking about fancy antique shops with rare first editions behind glass.
No, not at all. The sources describe this as a knowledge market, but a really desperate one. The history here goes back to right after World War II. You had the Japanese leaving Taiwan and selling off their belongings. You had the nationalist government arriving, bringing their own libraries. A lot of books just ended up being sold off for survival.
It created this incredibly high cultural density, but there's a specific spot I want to highlight, Songlin Bookstore. It's been there for 70 years.
Wow.
The owner, Kai Jingwei, used to just sit there reading and guarding the shop. And his descendants say that these books represent the blood and tears of their ancestors.
That phrase, blood and tears, it's so important. It wasn't just commerce. It was the liquidation of a heritage. And we have to put this in the context of the White Terror era.
Of course.
Censorship was absolute. The government controlled what you could read, what you could think. But these old bookstalls, they were a gray zone.
The only places where forbidden or, sensitive knowledge could circulate privately.
Exactly. It was like a secret social club for intellectuals. If you were looking for cultural comfort or ideas that the state didn't approve of, maybe some Western philosophy, maybe some critical theory, you went to Guling Street. It was about the survival of knowledge in a time of oppression.
So for the hidden gem here, you just have to go visit the remaining bookstores, specifically Songlin Bookstore if you can. And the source gives us these amazing sensory details. Imagine just sitting there in the summer heat.
It's so immersive. The smell of old paper, the humidity.
You're drinking an iced coffee, maybe eating a mung bean cake, and you are just surrounded by books. On one shelf, you have the Siku Kwanshu, the complete library of the four treasuries. On the next shelf, you have Kant and Hegel.
Western philosophy rubbing shoulders with Chinese classics and Japanese colonial texts.
And there's classical music playing in the background. It's this heavy, thick atmosphere of history. You aren't just buying a paperback. You're stepping into a space that kept intellectual life alive when the world outside was trying to shut it down.
It really emphasizes that knowledge isn't just data. In that context, knowledge was resistance.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of intellectuals, our next story takes a turn towards the tragic. We are heading to the National Taiwan University Hospital and Medical School. Story number 3, the benevolent healers and the White Terror.
This is a heavy one, but it's essential. We have to understand the context of the medical elite in Taiwan. Under the Japanese colonial system, medicine was one of the few high-status paths open to local Taiwanese. So the smartest, most driven people became doctors.
They were the community leaders, and because they were smart and observant, they were the ones who saw the rot in the system first, right?
They did. After the war, under the new nationalist rule, there was massive corruption. Inflation was out of control. There was discrimination against the local Taiwanese. These doctors, they couldn't just stand by. They felt pushed from healing bodies to healing society.
So they got involved in politics.
Yes. Some joined the Communist Party, which you have to remember was a death sentence at the time. Some joined student self-government associations. They were trying to fix the society that was making their patients sick, in a metaphorical sense.
But the regime did not see it that way.
No. The regime viewed them as a threat because they had reform potential. I mean, if you want to control a society, you remove the people who are smart enough and brave enough to change it. And this led to the tragedy of the 228 incident and the White Terror. It was a surgical removal of the brain trust.
The sources give us specific names, and I think it's important we say them. Guo Shuzong.
He was a doctor who got involved in social movements. He was executed in 1950.
Lu Zhaoguang.
He had to flee to Shanghai and later Japan to do underground intelligence work.
And Qiu Linyuan.
An ophthalmology director who had to flee to China. The loss of talent was just staggering. It's a huge what if that hangs over Taiwan's history. What would the country have looked like if these people hadn't been killed or exiled?
So where's the hidden gem here? It's a walk, a historical trail.
You should visit the old NTU hospital grounds, the red brick buildings. They are beautiful Renaissance-style architecture. But you need to look at them differently now. Combine that with a walk to the nearby 228 Peace Park.
It's about understanding choice. That's what the source really emphasizes. These doctors had good lives, they had prestige, but they sacrificed their futures and often their lives for their political ideals.
So when you walk past those red brick buildings, think about the conversations that happened there. Think about that moment a doctor decided that, writing a prescription wasn't enough and that they had to rewrite the political structure, knowing the risk.
It's a powerful reminder of the cost of the freedom we often take for granted. Okay, now, let's zoom out a bit to look at the structure of the system itself. Story number 4, the shape of power.
Here we look at the Taiwan Tobacco and Liquor Monopoly Bureau and the city gates. This story connects economic oppression directly to political persecution.
Let's start with the building. The Monopoly Bureau on Nanchang Road, it's quite striking. Red brick, white stone bands, very distinct.
It was built during the Japanese era. It has this distinctive inverted V shape and a central spire. But its purpose was control. The Bureau controlled vital goods: opium, salt, tobacco, matches, petroleum, weights and measures.
The absolute basics of life.
Everything. It was a mechanism to extract wealth. And when the nationalist government took over, they inherited this monopoly system, but they completely mismanaged it.
And this is where we get the hyperinflation and unemployment that we mentioned earlier.
Exactly. The source mentions that they were just emptying out Taiwan's resources to support the Civil War back in China. The Monopoly Bureau became a symbol of economic exploitation. And remember, the flashpoint of the 228 incident, it started with a cigarette vendor. It was a conflict over monopoly regulations.
It wasn't a random fight. It was a spark in a room just filled with gas.
That's right. So the building itself stands as a monument to how the state controlled the daily livelihood of the people. And then you have the city gates.
The Jingfu Gate and Lijiang Gate.
They define the boundaries of power. They created an axis leading straight to the presidential office. It's a very visual demonstration of who is in charge.
So for the hidden gem, we suggest a kind of architectural tour. Go look at that Monopoly Bureau. Look at its spire.
And compared to the modern commercial landscape around it. Today, you walk into a 7-Eleven or a Family Mart, you can buy salt, matches, tobacco. That freedom of commerce is something we just take for granted. But that building reminds us of the time when the state held a stranglehold on those things.
It's a contrast between a free market democracy and a state-controlled monopoly. And then walk to the city gates to see how the city was literally laid out to serve the center of power.
It's a geometry of control that has now been broken by the modern market and by democracy.
Okay, we have covered some heavy ground. The imposing square, the desperate bookstores, the tragic hospital, the exploitative bureau. For our final story, we're going to slow things way down.
Good.
Story number 5. The philosophy of coexistence in the alleyways.
This takes us to Guling Street and the Nanchang Road Japanese dormitories.
We're moving from grand power to quiet living spaces. The scale just drops immediately here. No more giant monuments, just wooden houses and trees.
These were originally homes for mid-level officials and religious figures, like the Caodong sect of Buddhism. They represent the domestic side of the colonial and authoritarian eras. For a long time, these were off-limits private residences of the occupiers.
And usually in post-colonial societies, these are the first things to get torn down, aren't they? They are reminders of the people who ruled over you.
And that almost happened. They were just decaying. But then something shifted in Taiwan's civil society. Preservationists stepped in. They argued that these buildings, even if they were colonial, were part of the city's skin. So they saved them, and they transformed them into what the research calls soft cultural spaces.
Like the Taiwan Literature Base on Guling Street. That is our hidden gem here.
It's a beautiful example of repurposing. They took a space that was exclusive, a residence for officials, and made it inclusive. It's now a place for literature, for crafts, for the public. You can go inside, sit on the tatami mats, and just read poetry.
There is a beautiful metaphor in the source about the garden there.
Yes, the banyan tree, aerial roots intertwining with the royal palm trees.
And the royal palms are usually associated with authority, right? They were planted by the colonizers to line the boulevards.
Yes, but here you have the banyan roots, which are very local, very wild, very aggressive, wrapping themselves around them. It's a symbol of coexistence, and this shows how Taiwan's diverse culture has learned to live with its history. It's not destroying the past, it's hugging it, growing around it.
The source suggests a slow travel philosophy here.
Use your feet to walk, your eyes to observe, and your heart to feel.
These spaces have been depoliticized in a way. They are about healing. Unlike the Memorial Hall, which is still a site of political contest, the dormitories are a site of cultural reconciliation.
It's a place to just breathe.
Exactly.
So we've walked through these 5 stories. We've seen the boundaries of power at the gates, the resistance of the margins of the bookstores, the deep trauma at the hospital, the economic control at the bureau, and now the quiet healing in the dorms. What does this all mean when we put it together? If we synthesize this, we see that Zhongzheng district is a social repair project. I think that's the key phrase. The transformation of these sites from the square to the dorms isn't just about renovation or tourism. It's an engineering project of social repair. We are turning authoritarian heritage into democratic assets.
It's like recycling history. You don't throw it away, but you change what it's used for.
And for you, the listener, this means that visiting Zhongzheng district isn't just sightseeing. When you walk these routes, when you visit the Cultural Gallery or Songlin bookstore, you are participating in a reinterpretation of the past. You're keeping the memory alive, but you're also affirming the democratic present.
That is a powerful way to look at travel. It's not passive, it's active. You become part of the repair.
It connects you to the struggle and the resilience of the people who live there. And that is a much deeper connection than just looking at a pretty building.
I want to leave you with a thought to mull over as we wrap up. We often think of architecture as static, stone and concrete. But this deep dive shows us that buildings are fluid. Their meaning changes depending on who is standing in front of them or inside them.
That's right.
So next time you're in a place like this, maybe it's Taipei, maybe it's Berlin or Cape Town, and you find one of these hidden gems, ask yourself, can you recognize the enormous effort a society must make to move from trauma to reconciliation? The buildings are silent. They aren't going to tell you. But if you listen closely, like we did today, you can hear that history of struggle just beneath the surface.
It requires you to listen. That is the most important part.
Thank you for listening to this deep dive. Go find those hidden gems, and we'll see you next time.